By now, I'm sure that you've all seen the upcoming LEGO Infinity Saga sets, which look absolutely amazing, but to me the coolest part about these sets aren't the sets themselves, but what they represent for the Marvel theme as a whole. The biggest issue around the LEGO Marvel theme has always been the fact that they never go back and revisit some of the older MCU films, but that has all been resolved now with this new Infinity Saga line. So in light of that, I thought it'd be fun to take a look back at some of the older MCU films and count down the 10 best Infinity Saga sets that LEGO still needs to make. But before we go ahead and do that, I did want to give a really quick reminder that the giveaway for $100 worth of your choice of LEGO sets is still going on, so you could actually win a whole bunch of the brand new LEGO Infinity Saga sets. All you gotta do to enter is make sure you are subscribed, follow that link in the description, and sign in with your YouTube account. That's it, super simple and 100% free. Also, it turns out that less than 7% of you guys that are watching these videos are subscribed to the channel, so make sure you subscribe because it's free and you'll get a chance at winning some free LEGO sets. Anyways, let's get back to the video here. So I did want to give some really quick disclaimers about how I went about making this list. I did try to keep it to one set per movie, but there are a few films here that have multiple sets, and on top of that, none of these sets on this list have been made by LEGO before, so no remakes or anything like that. Also, I did want to really quickly mention that the new Disney Plus series like WandaVision and the Falcon Winter Soldier aren't part of the Infinity Saga line, so obviously I do want sets based on those shows. They just can't be included in this list just because they aren't part of the Infinity Saga. So let's get right into it. At number 10 here, we have the bridge battle from Spider-Man Far From Home. Now, I gotta be completely honest with you guys, I'm not the biggest fan of this movie. I do think Homecoming was far better than Far From Home. I just never really connected with Mysterio as a villain. The plot twist didn't really get me at all. I mean, right from the trailers, I already knew that Mysterio was gonna be the bad guy in this movie. I'm not saying it's a bad movie or anything, I just think Homecoming was an amazing film and Far From Home was just not as great. Now, we did get 3 sets that were officially based on this movie, but the big problem with all of these sets were that none of them included Spider-Man's upgraded black and red suit. Don't get me wrong, his classic suit and the Iron Spider look amazing, but this black and red outfit just looked super nice, and it was just such a shame that LEGO never included this minifigure in a set. In fact, they just gave us the exact same version that we got from Homecoming, which didn't really make much sense to the movie. So I'd want a set based on this movie to include this variation of the suit, and then also one of the best Spider-Man sets ever made was the Web Warriors Ultimate Bridge Battle. I've always really loved this set, so I'd kind of want this Far From Home set to be sort of similar to this, except with a bunch of drones, and include Mysterio and all that. In general, I don't really like getting vehicles for Spider-Man sets. I do like getting large play sets or environments that Spider-Man can then interact with, something similar to this Bridge Battle set or the new Daily Bugle. And even though I wasn't that big of a fan of Far From Home itself, I do think that final action sequence was pretty amazing. But I gotta be honest, my main reason for wanting a set based on this movie is just to get that upgraded Spider-Man suit. I am really hoping that we'll see this exact minifigure in the upcoming Spider-Man No Way Home sets, but who knows, he may not even be included in there, so the best chance at getting this suit may just be the Infinity Saga line. Also, I know a few people are going to bring this up that Far From Home technically isn't part of the Infinity Saga, but I did have to look this up and it actually is, even though it was released after Endgame. It's kind of similar to how Ant-Man is part of Phase 2 of the MCU, even though it was released after Age of Ultron. So Far From Home is almost like an epilogue to the entire Infinity Saga. Anyways, that's going to do it for our number 10 spot. Let's get on to number 9 here, and that is going to be Thanoss Farm from Avengers Infinity War and also Endgame. Now, I know this set could be from either movies, but in general, I'd want it to be from Endgame, just because in that movie, something actually important happens there. In Infinity War, we only really see him sit down on these steps. Now, I think it'd be very unrealistic for LEGO to ever make this set, just because it's one of the more violent scenes in the entire MCU. I mean, the major thing that happens in this scene is that Thanos gets decapitated, and that just doesn't seem that on brand for LEGO, so I don't really think they'll make this set, but I do think it'd be a great way to include some awesome minifigures that we've never seen from the Infinity Saga. Specifically Thor in his Infinity War suit with the cape and everything, and the big one for me, that being Captain America in his stealth suit. The stealth suit has always been my favorite Captain America outfit ever since it was first introduced in Captain America the Winter Soldier, and I'm really glad they let him put it on one more time here in the final movie. LEGO never actually got to make an official version of this Captain America suit, just because we never got sets based on the second Captain America movie, but it's a minifigure that I've always wanted, and it'd be great to get him here. Now, we will be getting a new Asgard set that is going to be released later this year, and it is also going to be part of the Infinity Saga line, so I don't think it's too far-fetched to get sets like this, where it's pretty much just somebody's house. Like, I don't really know how many play features you can include in a set like Thanoss Farm, but in general, I still think it'd be a cool set to have. It's kind of become really iconic at this point. You know, you could have the Scarecrow with all his battle armor on it, and it'll just be a build that we typically don't see in LEGO sets too often. I just love the whole ending of Infinity War and the beginning of Endgame, so getting a set based around those moments would be awesome. Alright, so that is going to do it for number 9 here. Let's get on to number 8, which is going to be Red Skull's car from the first Captain America movie. We have never officially gotten any sets from Captain America the First Avenger, and that's kind of a shame because that's the only time that we get to see Steve in his World War II suit. Now, he does actually end up wearing the same suit at the end of the second Captain America movie, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the list. Anyways, the first Captain America movie isn't my favorite by any means. I do think it's the weakest of all the Captain America films, but that is saying a lot because the entire trilogy of those movies is amazing. I think Civil War and The Winter Soldier are some of the best MCU films ever made, so the fact that Captain America the First Avenger is the last of those isn't an insult to that film at all. Now, minifigures aside, the reason that I'd want to see a set based on Red Skull's car is that LEGO really likes to make sets based on vehicles, which is completely fine. I personally just like play sets instead of vehicles, just because mostly vehicles in Marvel movies aren't that iconic, but this is one that does stand out, and I think it'd be a build that non-MCU fans and MCU fans alike could both appreciate. It's just a really cool looking old style World War II vehicle that I'm sure a lot of LEGO enthusiasts could enjoy. So if I had to realistically pick any set based on the first Captain America movie, it'd be this. And obviously in this set you could also include minifigures like the Red Skull and also Peggy Carter. So yeah, it really does suck that LEGO never had the Marvel license when this movie came out, but now that we have the Infinity Saga line, they could go back and revisit this movie. Alright, that does it for number 8. Now let's get on to number 7 here, which is going to be Sokovia from Avengers Age of Ultron. Now I know a lot of people actually hate the second Avengers movie. I'm not really sure why. I've always enjoyed it quite a bit, and this is going to be a super hot take, but I actually enjoy the second Avengers movie more than the first. I don't know what it is about the first movie. I know it's what started everything, but it just feels a little bit cheesy to me, and Age of Ultron just feels like the first proper Avengers film. Not hating on any of these movies though, they're both great. I just like the second one a little bit more than the first. Anyways, my favorite sequence from this entire movie is when the island gets dropped, and you have Iron Man underneath the entire thing firing his unibeam while Thor hammers it down from the top. That whole moment with all the music and everything going at the same time, it was just so epic, and I loved watching it in theaters. So I'd want a set based on this to be the entire city floating in the sky, and you could use water pieces and whatnot to make up stands. I know this would be super out of scale, but I want the center to just be that machine that they have to protect. You know, that's where they have that one big slow-mo sequence where all the Avengers are fighting together against Ultron protecting the machine. So I'd kind of want the build to be just that area itself, and then it would be built on top of this floating rock essentially, which would represent Sokovia. Yes, I know it'd be super out of scale, but I do think it would make for a really nice display piece. And for the minifigures here, you could honestly include any of the Avengers that appear in Avengers Age of Ultron, but one character I would specifically want is Quicksilver, just because he doesn't appear in any other MCU film, so that would be the only way that we could get this minifigure again. Alright, let's move on to number 6 here, which is going to be the Collector's Museum. Now this set wouldn't be based on one specific movie just because the Collector does appear in quite a few different films, but in general I still think it'd be a really cool set just because of how many Easter eggs you could pack into it. I guess I'd want it to be based on the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie just because that's where we see the most of it, and in that scene we get to see all these cases and collectibles of all this stuff from around the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so it would be really awesome to get a set based on this. Now we did actually get an official collector minifigure back in 2014. This one was unfortunately a Comic-Con exclusive though, and it's worth a lot of money now, so most of us don't have the luxury of having it, but they could honestly just re-include that minifigure or make an entire new one just to keep some exclusivity. I'd also want this set to include his assistant and also the legendary Howard the Duck. So I wouldn't want this set to be too big or anything, hopefully around the $30 to $40 price range, but just packed in with a bunch of different Easter eggs from around the Marvel Universe. This is a set that I don't likely see happening for the Infinity Saga, but it's one that I'd really want to see. Alright guys, we are now halfway through our list, so at number 5 we have the Cave Escape from the first Iron Man movie. Now we are already getting a set from the first Iron Man movie in the Infinity Saga, that being the Iron Man Ironmonger Mayhem set. Honestly, I have mixed feelings about that set. I think the build for Ironmonger himself is horrible, but the minifigures here are really amazing. So if I had to pick a scene from the first Iron Man movie to make, it would be that Ironmonger battle set, but if I had to pick a second one, it would be the first time that we were introduced to the Iron Man armor, that being when Tony finally escapes the cave. Now this is a set that I don't really see LEGO making, just because it's a little bit too close to modern military stuff, and LEGO tends to shy away from that type of stuff completely, so I don't really see them doing this set, but I still think it'd be really cool to get. Now we have already gotten the Iron Man Mark 1 armor before, before, and that minifigure does look great and everything, but I do think it could be done a little bit better. I think they should give him a larger armor piece, similar to what we get with Wrecker in the Star Wars Bad Batch set. And then also a minifigure that would absolutely need to be included is Jensen. This is a character that I think a lot of people forget exists in the MCU, but you gotta give him credit, he is technically one of the people that start this entire universe. Like, Tony Stark would not become Iron Man without Jensen, and the entire MCU would not become the MCU without Iron Man. But he only really appears in one movie, and it was only in the beginning of that movie too, so I do feel like a lot of fans forget he exists. But he's there, and he's always been a character that I've absolutely loved, so I'd love to get a set that includes him working with Tony to make that first Iron Man suit. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more doable it does sound. Like, if they don't include any of the bad guys and their weapons or anything like that, and just focus on Tony Stark's makeshift lab, then I don't think it would be too violent to make a Lego set on. Lego's violence policy has always been a really weird thing. There are some things that don't seem that violent at all, like for example Jedi Fallen Order, the video game. That got banned pretty much for being too violent, but then we also have sets based on Star Wars Episode 3 where people are being burnt alive, and that is somehow completely okay. So I'm not too sure about Lego's violence rules, but I still think it'd be really cool to get a cave escape set from the first Iron Man movie. Anyways, that is going to do it for our number 5 spot. Let's get on to number 4 here, which is going to be the highway battle from the second Captain America movie, that being Captain America the Winter Soldier. Now, I absolutely love this movie. In my opinion, it is critically the best MCU film ever made. Like, when you don't look at the larger universe or anything like that, just look at one movie in itself, I think this is the best one. At least it's got to be this or Civil War. It's just one of the two for me. Either way though, this is a great movie, but unfortunately we never got sets based on it. I'm not sure if you guys know this, but earlier in Lego's contract with Marvel, they were only allowed to make sets based on one movie per year, and then later it was increased to like 2 movies a year, but now it seems like they've completely gotten rid of that rule and they can make sets on as many movies as they want. Now, the reason that I chose the highway battle specifically is just because it's my favorite action sequence from the entire film, specifically during the Winter Soldier and Captain America's hand-to-hand fight, and Bucky starts doing all these crazy tricks with his knife. That is hands down the best hand-to-hand combat scene in the entire MCU, but who knows, it does seem like Shang-Chi will be putting a big emphasis on hand-to-hand combat, so maybe they do top this. But either way, I do really love that whole scene, so I would really like a set based on it. The only thing that would kind of suck about getting a set based on that moment is that all the characters are pretty much wearing civilian clothes, other than the Winter Soldier himself, but we actually already got an official version of the Winter Soldier in a very small poly bag. But just like we talked about earlier, the minifigure that I'd want most from this movie is Captain America in his stealth suit. Like I mentioned earlier, this is my favorite Captain America outfit, and he only wears it twice, in this movie and in Endgame. So either way, I don't care how they do it, I just want this minifigure. So I guess there are better scenes from this movie that you could portray, like the boat sequence in the beginning, or the climax of the movie where the helicarriers start to shoot each other down. You could honestly do both, but the only one where the stealth suit could be included is in that first opening sequence of the boat. And I would love to see a set based on that, although it just feels a little bit too gritty and realistic. I just don't see Lego making a set based on that. So at this spot, I don't really have one specific set that I'd like to see. It could just be anything from this movie. As long as I get the stealth suit, that's just the thing that I want the most. Alright, so that will do it for number 4. So on to our final 3 sets here. So at number 3 here, we have the Avengers Headquarters. Now, this is the set that I was talking about earlier that we technically have gotten before. With the Endgame sets, we did get that Avengers Headquarters set, although I think that was more trying to portray the final battle rather than the Avengers Headquarters itself. Either way, I do think that set sucks though, because it fails at both. It doesn't really portray the final battle accurately, nor does it make a really cool Avengers Headquarters. And the minifigure selection there just wasn't that great to me, but thankfully, this has all been fixed by the upcoming Endgame final battle set, which pretty much just replaces the set that we got before. Anyways, what I'd actually like to see here is the compound itself, so not the Avengers Tower or anything like that, just the compound that we see in Civil War and the later Avengers movies as well. Now, I'd want a set like this to be an absolutely massive playset. Like, I'd want it to be very large and very complete, so closed up from all sides and everything. So it would really need to be done as an 18+ set, kind of similar in style to the new Daily Bugle. Lego isn't shy about giving us these complete large-scale adult builds in the Marvel theme, and now that we've seen the Daily Bugle, I'd want to see them step into the Marvel Cinematic Universe and give us the Avengers Headquarters. A set like this would obviously be very expensive, probably around the $300 range, and I'd want it to include an absolutely amazing lineup of minifigures, that being all the Avengers in a bunch of different variants. I'd want it to include a training area, some living quarters, and hopefully a garage for Tony as well. In real life, the Avengers compound is actually the facilities used by the Audi car company, and that building is absolutely gorgeous, so I'd want a set like this to reflect the look of that building. This is one that I do think is kind of realistic just because we are already getting sets like this with the Daily Bugle, so I don't think it's too far-fetched to expect a large Avengers compound set, even though it does get destroyed in Endgame. This is the Infinity Saga line after all, so we are looking at old designs, not new. But that is pretty much going to do it for number 3. Let's get on to number 2 here, which is going to be Asgard. Now I know you're thinking, what do you mean by Asgard? Like there's no way you mean the entire city. But that's exactly what I'm talking about. I want to see the entire city of Asgard as a Lego set. Now hold on, I know that sounds super far-fetched, but hear me out, I do think it's possible. So we just talked about how these large $300 type of sets are possible within the Marvel theme, so something like the Avengers compound is kind of doable. So what I'd want here is a very large build of the main skyline of Asgard, including the Rainbow Bridge and all that stuff. And this set wouldn't be based on one movie specifically, but rather the entire Thor trilogy. So think of it as almost like the Death Star that we got from Star Wars. You'd have different sections of the set representing iconic moments from the 3 movies. So from the first Thor movie, you can have that entire basement where they keep all those items, and then also Odin's throne and all that. And then from the second movie, you could have Loki's jail cell. And then from the third Thor movie, you can include a build that represents Matt Damon and those actors doing that play that kind of recreates some of the moments from the past 2 films. Also, you can include builds for like a gigantic Surtur who could come in and destroy it all. And you could also include figures for Hela and then all of Thor's friends who die really fast in Thor Ragnarok. There's just so much that could be done here, but I think the coolest part about all of this is this would be one of the best looking Lego sets ever made, just because Asgard is such a beautiful looking place. Like all the shimmering gold and then the Rainbow Bridge and all of that, if that was somehow represented in Lego form, that would easily be one of the best looking Lego sets ever made. I'm just picturing this really large Asgard build on my desk here, and it just looks absolutely beautiful in my mind. Obviously this may be a little bit unrealistic. I don't know if they'd put this much money and effort into designing a set based around the Thor universe. Like Thor is popular, don't get me wrong, but I think they'd rather go with an Avengers compound set just because Asgard may not be that recognizable or desirable to non-MCU fans. Either way though, I want this set super badly. I think it would be amazing. Alright, that is going to do it for our number 2 spot. Now typically right before we get to our number 1 spot, I do some honorable mentions about sets that didn't make it onto this list. But before we do the honorable mentions, I did want to include another section here, that being the buildable objects. So we are getting the new buildable Infinity Gauntlet, and all these sets I'm about to name can kind of be done in a similar style. And there are honestly so many different builds that you could pick from the Marvel Cinematic Universe to represent here in Lego form, but I thought I'd just name some of the few that I'd want to see the most. Now this is one that I feel like is going to happen very soon, that being Mjolnir. A buildable Mjolnir set would be awesome. Now obviously it wouldn't be to scale to the actual Mjolnir, but that's completely okay. It's not like the Infinity Gauntlet is to scale either. We could also get a build for Captain America's shield, Tony Stark's arc reactor. I think this would be an awesome one. You could also include printed parts to include the words Tony Stark has a heart. I think any MCU fan would love to have a Lego set based on that. They could even include some light up bricks that would make it even more awesome. Anyways, a few other ones here are the Eye of Agamotto from Doctor Strange, the Nano Gauntlet, Stormbreaker, Star-Lord's helmet, and then a Spider-Man mask. The last 2 here would pretty much be part of like the helmets line of sets, which is similar to what we got with the Iron Man helmet back in 2020. But that's pretty much going to do it for the buildable objects. Now let's get on to our honorable mentions here. Don't worry, I'm not going to go into too much detail or anything. I'm just going to list them off, starting with the Dormammu face-off from Doctor Strange, the Q-ship from Avengers Infinity War, Kamar-Taj also from Doctor Strange, the Barton Farm from Avengers Age of Ultron and also Infinity War, Iron Man and War Machine vs. Whiplash from Iron Man 2, and then this is a set that will probably never get made just because of how violent it is, that being Vormir from Avengers Infinity War / Endgame. But that pretty much does it for our honorable mentions, and now let's get on to our number 1 set. So the number 1 Infinity Saga set that Lego needs to make is the Battle for Wakanda. Now after seeing the trailers for Infinity War, this is a set that all of us wanted. We all knew this huge battle was going to take place, and we all wanted it in Lego form, and I guess it technically has been represented in Lego form with a few different sets, but that's not really what I'm talking about here. I don't want these small disconnected builds. I want one large, really accurate set that includes a bunch of different minifigures, kind of similar to what we got with the Endgame Final Battle set. This would just be the Infinity War Final Battle. So obviously with a set like this, the primary focus would just be minifigures, but I'd still want them to include some builds, maybe like the hover ships that are used to transport Wakandan troops, or also maybe an updated version of the Outrider dropships. Obviously those things are really large, so they wouldn't be to scale, and I think that's okay, they don't really need to be, but the main focus here would be the minifigures, and I want the set to be absolutely loaded. I'd want characters like Captain America, Thor, Groot, Rocket, Bucky, Black Panther, Okoye, M'Baku, Bruce Banner, Falcon, War Machine, Vision, Scarlet Witch. Honestly, this list is going to be super large. I'd pretty much want every single character included in that scene. Now that is super unrealistic to expect, but if they could include some of the major ones, I think this would be an awesome set. This is a set that so many fans were requesting after Infinity War came out, but obviously at the time we did know that LEGO will never go back and revisit older MCU films, and that was a real shame, but now that has all changed with the new Infinity Saga line. So that is a set that I'd want to see the most. I'd buy it the second it's released, but I think that's pretty much going to do it, guys. There's your look at the top 10 Infinity Saga sets that LEGO needs to make. Don't get me wrong, I'm super grateful that we even got these Infinity Saga sets. I just think there's so much more that we could get, and there are also tons of sets that I'd want them to remake as well, but I didn't really want to focus too much on that in today's video. So guys, before you head out, make sure to go down in the comments below and let me know what your top 10 list would look like. What moments and scenes would you like portrayed in LEGO from the past MCU films? Also, what buildable object sets would you like to see in the future? Whatever you're thinking, anything and everything, make sure to leave it down in the comments below. Also, if you guys haven't had a chance to enter the giveaway, make sure to do so. But that will pretty much do it for me. Again, thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.